So I had a lot of female colleagues say, are you sure you really want to go do that? And I said, listen, ever since I was a little kid, when I'd come home for lunch on Thursdays, I'd go running out to the mailbox and couldn't wait for the mailman to deliver Sports Illustrated, and I'd devour it over the noon hour. Yes, I want to work there. And I had faith in myself that if I really worked hard and devoted time and energy to it, that I just felt that someday I would be a writer there. Now, that's not to say it was easy, and you know, I'd have to say, I think part of the reason that I never had a child is that, although now I have 2 dogs, but that's late in life children, but I never had a child, and I think a lot of it is because back in the 80s, you know, it was a hard thing to be a woman who had it all. They didn't have childcare at Sports Illustrated. And by the way, I'm jumping ahead here, but when I eventually was named, I was named a staff writer, and then I was named before I was 30, and then I was off of my Pete Rose investigation and my George Steinbrenner investigation, and all my NFL notes column. I was finally named a senior writer. And I will never forget one of my mentors at the magazine calling me to congratulate me. Now this is about 1990 and I'm about 34, and he said, "This is so great that you're a senior writer, now you can just kick back and have babies." Again, this is not anything, if somebody said that to you today in business, it wouldn't fly. So I think part of the way I made my mark at Sports Illustrated, I started in August of '81. 4 months later, I got involved in my first investigation. It was about Pam Parsons, the South Carolina women's basketball coach. And she suddenly resigned due to health reasons. So I was working on Scorecard, which is the newsy section up front in the magazine. And they asked me to do some reporting. And I started making phone calls, and then they sent me down there, and then I realized that she didn't really have a health problem. She was having an affair with one of her players, and another player complained. So that started an odyssey of 5 weeks traveling around the country, talking to former players, and finding out what actually went on there. The story came out, ironically enough, in a swimsuit issue, and it was called Stormy Weather at South Carolina. Eventually, Pam Parsons and her lesbian lover, well actually it was Pam Parsons eventually sued us, claiming she wasn't gay, and that I and Sports Illustrated had ruined her life, and she wasn't even able to wait on tables at the Waffle House. She put a little price tag of $72 million on this. We ended up in South Carolina defending ourselves for 2 weeks, and it was an interesting scene, because here we were, the people from New York, saying it's okay to be gay, but when you're educating people, this is not what they're sending their kids to school to be educated in, and you're pressuring kids to become gay, and you're also making decisions on recruiting and who plays because of their sexual orientation. And meanwhile, she kept saying she wasn't gay and paraded every player who was gay up there to claim that they weren't gay, until finally, about 10 days into the trial, a film clip happened to run on a TV station in Salt Lake City, and a woman named Babs DeLay, who was a disc jockey at a lesbian bar called the Puss in Boots, saw that this was going on. She called the 800 number for Time subscriptions, and the smart thinking person there put her in touch with our attorneys, and we flew her in and said, okay, do you have a membership book at the Puss in Boots? Yes. Is Pam Parsons a member of the Puss in Boots lesbian bar? Yes. Could you please bring that to court? And she did, and we ended up winning. And Pam Parsons and her lesbian lover ended up going to prison for 4 months for perjury after that whole thing happened. Let's see. I want to say that Sports Illustrated was also an extremely rewarding experience for me. Again, not without discrimination. As Jim said, I worked on the Pete Rose investigation and the George Steinbrenner investigation, 1989, 1990. And the magazine was thrilled to win these National Magazine Awards for Excellence, the first they'd ever won. And they were busy showing pages of the stories at this luncheon for the awards, but forgot to invite me. There was also a time where Sports Illustrated did some NFL season kickoff shows with ABC, and I had the lead story, but they had a man do the voiceover because, God forbid, they'd have a woman, precede Monday Night Football talking football. And another time at Sports Illustrated, when I had lost a bunch of weight, the managing editor had me in a photo selection meeting and said, "Turn around so we can look at your body." Again, sports is just such a boys' club. I'll complain about all that, but I'm going to tell you that I think the one comment that was made, which probably is why I got where I was, is Gil Rogan, the managing editor, same man who wanted me to turn around, actually said, "I like Jill, she's got balls." I was like, okay, that's okay. So in 1995, I left Sports Illustrated. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to write more, and I sent all my stuff to USA Today. They hired me practically instantly. And I did long takeouts, cover stories, page 3 stories. The minute I walked into that place, I thought, wow, this is a cross-section of America. They had, there were women seemingly in positions of responsibility. It was super diverse. There was even a blind guy who then ended up winning, $100,000 on Jeopardy at something, but he was brilliant. So I felt like this is a great place because Sports Illustrated was very white male, and this seemed to be more of a cross-section of America. I was there until December 2008, and I didn't do as much beat writing or really that much locker room coverage. I did, investigations, profiles. I covered a lot of major events. And again, I wish I could tell you it was smoother, but it wasn't. Some of the comments made by my sports editor were, sexually explicit and uncalled for. I left in December 2008, and now I'm concentrating on writing books. I really like the challenge of just burrowing in on subjects, and I think books are the thing for me because you get to know so much about somebody you're writing about. The first book that I've got coming out in June is on Misty May, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist in beach volleyball. She was born in 1977, which is a year before I got out of college. And just going through her life story, and of course, again and again and again, as Ingrid knows, when you write books, you reread them so many times before they come out. But I was reminded how different her experience was as a woman in sports. Now, granted, when she started playing soccer, she was like one of only 2 girls on the soccer team, which was otherwise all boys. But then after that, there were just so many choices for girls, and girls were just so encouraged. And she grew up at a time when brothers, fathers, boys, men liked to go to watch their sisters or friends. They liked to watch girls' sports. In my era, it was like, oh, you don't want to go to a girls' athletic event. She was never called a tomboy. And that would be the way that people would probably have characterized me in my earlier days. And she's somebody who competes in a bikini, and she's a large gal, but with a muscular body, but doesn't give it a second thought, which is also, to me, just really interesting. she's a pioneer in her own right, but it's really interesting how sports are just so different today than they were in the late 70s. So, I started thinking, if I just tell you my life story, then I've got to be, that's not enough. To me, I need to give you a message about empowerment. Over the years, I always thought empowerment was about academics. I was valedictorian in my high school class, being number one in things, being the first of something, the first female sports editor, the first female to make it as an NFL writer at Sports Illustrated. And then at some point in my life, the light goes on. Nobody's really keeping score. Then I thought, maybe empowerment is really physical challenges. So to celebrate my 40th birthday, I did the Ironman in Hawaii. And I've also at various stages thought that, exercise can really empower you. Weight training, weight loss can empower you. Then the more I started thinking about this empowerment issue the other day, it was like, wait a minute. These are all sort of external ways of empowering you. And I started to think that really, and Ingrid touched on this too, you're truly empowered by internal things, by connecting to yourself, by being in healthy and happy relationships, by staying in the moment, by being centered. When did I realize how powerful I truly was? Between September 2007 and December 2008, in that 15-month span, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, my dad died, and I was job eliminated. Now, I'd gained strength and confidence and wisdom through my experience, but I'd really gained all my empowerment by connecting to my passions. I was successful because I outwork and I out-prepare others. And I'll never forget a competitor at the Milwaukee Journal when I was at the Sentinel who was covering Wisconsin football when I was. So he was covering it against me, so to speak, trying to scoop me. And he said, Jill, what I really admire about you is you never look or act scared. And I know, we all know that you're walking into situations and we all know that you're scared because we're scared. It's like, this is not something you are really allowed to be if you're a woman in sports writing. So I told him an adage I often live by. Sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and jump. And always have a towel handy.